Of course, I'm very impressed to speak just after a Nobel Prize. I just wanted to pick two words from the last presentation. The first one is the unknown, and we have a fantastic presentation of what is going into the unknown of quantum physics. And the second one is preservation. As it was explained in the very late discussions, preservation of coherence is very important to understand the magic of quantum physics. I will build precisely on these two words, unknown and preservation. To begin with, I'd completely changed the type of presentation. This is not physics, and what you see here is a painting by the great master, Hiramatsu Reiji. And this is a painting you all know about, the white lilies by Monet, and Monet painted white lilies inspired by Japanese style. And this artist is a Japanese artist, contemporary one, and he was inspired by Monet to repaint white lilies. So this is a form of creation that is deeply preserving. And I would like to discuss with you this logic of creative preservation, not in art, but in industry. I am coming from a word which is generativity science. There is a subfield of engineering design which is working on design theory, and design theory is made of people working on how people generate things, newness. We have great ancestors, for instance, German professors. The one you see here is Ferdinand Rettermacher, and he wrote books on how to design machines for the Grand Duchy of Baden. But you could also count among the ancestors these guys, the professors at Bauhaus, a school where people were taught to increase their creative gift. This is another kind of theory method for being more creative. Or this guy is Paul Cohen, the next one here, Fields Medal 1966, for inventing a technique for creating new models of set theory. So a fantastic technical mathematical method to create, design new objects. These are our grand ancestors, and in this field, we try to improve the models of how to design new things. The question I would like to discuss with you in the coming minutes is, for today, do we know enough to address the question of creative preservation, or do we need to go a little step further to account for creativity in a world where we need to be at the same time creative and preserving? The first part of the talk would be on why creative preservation today and the link between great transitions and creative preservation. The second part is to show you a little hints on what is CK theory for creative preservation, so a design theory for creative preservation. And the last part, just to mention a couple of examples. If we speak of transitions today, I could give you a lot of examples in energy transition, digital transition, climate change, etc. You all know about this, and what we know from that is that transition is probably not a very good word. Historians have told us that this word is coming from a poor analogy, saying that energy after energy, you have a transition from coal to oil and oil to nuclear, etc. So it seems that there is something that is deterministic, ballistic, and historian told us it's not true. When you have new energy, you have synergies, hybridization, new uses, new industry. So of course, it's much more complex than that. And probably a better analogy is not the classical sigmoid curve. It's much more to think about this with another image in physics, changes in the state of matter, where you have the same matter, but with completely different description variables. So in a way, this is more the kind of transition we are living today, preserving something, but with deep changes. At a more macro industrial level, what you see is that finally, we tend to think about this like a techno-solutionism, as if only technology has to be designed, or something like a social determinism, where you say, well, we have the techniques and we just should change the society. Of course, it's not true, and if you look at certain successful industrial transition, finally what has to be worked, to be designed is very different. One good example for this is how we managed to substitute refrigerants in refrigerators. You all know that CFC were excellent refrigerants until we discovered that it destroyed ozone layer. in upper level atmosphere. And what the global world engineers everywhere managed was to substitute all the CFC in the refrigerators by new refrigerants. And interestingly enough, we knew the new refrigerants. So the technological solution was here, but there was still a fantastic effort to be able to shift and change all the systems. So finally, there was something to design that was not the refrigerant itself, but change the whole system. We were able here to keep the system and yet change it. So this is probably what we are looking for. Now, if we go to a micro level, very small one, and we think about the decisions that we have to take as policymakers, as managers, etc., well, finally, the question is not set like this. It is set like, either this is A or this is B. Either you ban phytosanitary product and you kill industry, or you keep phytosanitary product, but you keep biodiversity. This is either biodiversity or employment. And many, many transition decisions are posed like this, like sacrificial dilemma. When we have a designer view about this, the point is not that. The point is it possible to design a solution that is better than A and better than B? And if you want to do this, you have at the same time to keep the past and transform it. That's why transition appears as a very strange form of creative preservation. The issue of transition today is certainly not Schumpeterian innovation. It's not creative destruction. It's, on the contrary, creative preservation. This is probably the great issue for designers today. The question for us in our field, where we discuss about design theory, is to wonder whether our models are relevant for this kind of question. Do we have design theory adapted for creative preservation? So now I take you with me in the field of design theory. Design theory is interesting because it's more than optimization, knowledge creation by combinatorics. So it's more than usual decisional rationality. And it's not classical psychological approach of ideation where you have ideas. No, the point is not that. It's to be able to combine the knowledge we have to make new things emerge based on the knowledge. And recent theory tried to combine knowledge theory with creativity theory. And this is probably one of the good results of design theory, is to combine these two approaches, knowledge models plus creativity models. How does it work? Briefly. Yes, briefly. You have to separate the world into two spaces. The first one is a space of knowledge, where you combine, you infer, etc. So you deduce in a way. And you reserve another space, which is the C space, the concept space, where you are allowed to have objects where you don't know everything. You can describe them, and they stay partly unknown. Some parameters are not defined yet. So this is different from the knowledge space. This is a concept space. And the game is to use knowledge to explore and to, finally not explore, but define the future yet unknown objects. And on the other hand, to use what you imagine about the future yet unknown objects to create new knowledge for this. So you have two operators, from knowledge to imagination, and from imagination to knowledge. And playing that game rigorously enables you to be more rigorous in the design process. That's interesting. There are a lot of papers about this. In particular, this theory was born at Ecole des Mines by Armand Actuel, Benoît Veil, and the works were supported by Dassault Systèmes very much, and we have to thank them for this great support over time. And step by step, what did we do? For instance, there are interesting results. We tried to understand how it fitted with more mathematical approaches on this, forcing. Doing this, you better understand what are the constraints to do this. Not every type of knowledge is adapted to a creation, for instance. So you need to follow some rules given by mathematicians. The knowledge structure has to follow the splitting condition, for instance. That's really interesting in the way we teach engineering. Second interesting consequence, if you have a good theory of what is generativity, it's possible to classify and clarify what is the generativity of generative AI, for instance, or generative design algorithms. And it's possible to clarify the type of generativity. So, excellent result over time about this. But the question for us is, what if we want not only break the rules, not only create new things that defix ourselves and surprise us, but what if we want to create and preserve simultaneously? So is it just a trade-off, for instance? You have to combine in a mild way hot water and cold water. This is a trade-off. Or is it a different reasoning? And if it is a different reasoning, can you do this several times? What is the space of exploration behind creative preservation? Or is it just once and then you die? And if you are able to understand this, what is the kind of fixation you suffer from in this world? Are you fixed somewhere, and where are you fixed? Or are you more free in the capacity to create things? Here, we can build, I will show you that we can build on CK theory, plus some mathematical approaches, but it would be very, very dry, so I prefer to begin with a very simple example. We are now with the French railways, and their question is how to renovate, maintain the local railways. So we have thousands of kilometers of local railways. Those local railways are very important for the cohesion of territories, for decarbonated mobility, but their maintenance costs a lot. And step after time, delays after delay, we try to maintain them with low level of money, and finally the railroads die. The question is how to maintain them in a hyper-frugal way, as one of my colleagues at SNCF say. Is it possible to have a hyper-frugal way to maintain railroad? It's not easy, because you have to remember that maintaining this is this kind of civil engineering. You have complex system. This is a system here, a very simplified way. You have at least a platform, and then ballast, and then the rails on it, and you imagine all this system with civil engineering everywhere. So step by step, it is quite complicated. And you have a lot of engineering rules to clarify what has to be done in this system to remain safe. So finally, you imagine it is quickly complex, costly, and you have to address a lot of safety issues. What is a good way to design, in this situation, a renovation of the local railways? I keep the CK representation. Immediately, if you want to renovate a new system to renovate railways, a temptation to say, well, the rules are too costly. Why not changing the rules? Well, why not? The good reason is just economics. Changing the rules is extraordinarily costly. You have to reevaluate everything. So this is not feasible for a good reason. It's too costly. So what does it mean to renovate the local railways by preserving the rules? Preservation. Here, immediately you say, well, if I preserve the rule, I already know that my railroads are out of order. Or I already know that I should change every element of the railroad, which again is too costly. So the trap is here. We are dead. And what they did at SNCF is to say, well, we could just say we keep the rules, but we are allowed to apply them even to unknown objects. So what if, for instance, we keep the rules and we say, suppose we know about the platforms, the ballast, but we don't know about the rail. We are ready to redesign the rail, and those rails will have to follow the rules. And they follow this step of reasoning, which is finally quite complicated, because you have to combine all the rules in a very strange way, different from the usual way. And they came to a surprising solution. For the local railroads, it's interesting to use rails from the TGV lines, long welded rails, more than 100 meters long, because if you have long welded rails that you were supposed to use only on TGV lines, you can stabilize the whole line, not from the bottom, but from the top. The rules are preserved, the rails are slightly changed, but only slightly, and you have a very satisfying solution, which is, in a way, creative. Simple example. Suppose you have to do that regularly on all the small elements, tiny elements, of the railroad preservation. This is just an example. If you now try to systematize the process, what we were not able to find another solution than using topos theory, which is a little bit demanding, sorry for that. But so topos theory is a theory proposed by Grothendieck, another filmmaker the same year as Paul Cohen, 1966. And topos theory is important because, on the one hand, it says the rules you have can correspond to so-called mathematical term category. We could even call this a model, to be Very simple. And you will choose to design either by generate a new category, too costly, or keep the category. Interesting. And now, keeping the category, when you live in a category, you have different ways of living. And this is where Grothendieck proposed something absolutely fantastic. This is how to live in a category. And you can decide to live in a category as if you knew everything. And this is a certain Grothendieck topology, so-called discrete one. But you can decide to live in a category by keeping some elements partly unknown. So you have a model where the mathematical object is only partially known. So you can decide which element is partially known. And there are many different Grothendieck topologies for one category. So you decide the Grothendieck topology you want, you avoid the discrete one, which is a dead end, but you can keep all the other so-called dense ones. And inside those ones, you can design very, very efficiently. You can design in this world is now transforming a pre-sheaf into a sheaf. So this design is called here a sheafification process. And the fantastic result is that you can do this extraordinarily systematically. So for any pre-sheaf, you can transform it into a sheaf. So you have a warranty that you will find a solution. Of course, Grothendieck topologies are difficult to find on given category, and you can have a lot of work to have a pre-sheaf that is sheafified into a sheaf. So it's not completely self-evident, but there is a path here, and for researchers, this is interesting. The properties are absolutely strange. For instance, you discover that inside this creative preservation, you have one word for each topology. So the creative power behind it is huge, immense. Second result, everything depends on the way you classified your knowledge. And you recognize that for a designer, you have this creative heritage. The knowledge he has, the category he can build on it, the topology he can build on it, and their sheafification capabilities. And you can, in a way, represent the creative power of an individual or of a company, for instance. And the surprising thing is that you are creative to a very surprising way. You can be fixed in many, many ways, even if it seems that we are trapped into the preservation process. So I hope I gave you a hint on this, a few applications to be on time. I show you an example with railways, but actually these works were born in another industry, with traditional industry, luxury industry. What do you do if you want to design a new Dom Pérignon for each year? And yet it has to be a Dom Pérignon, so creative preservation. And for the vineyard, so for people, the so-called chef de cave, who are in charge of designing the Dom Pérignon each year, they are doing creative preservation every year. When you change the chef de cave and there is a new one coming, how do you teach him where is the creative preservation and the creative legacy of the company? This is a good question for managers. The second example is taken from plant. A plant is a place where you have a lot of rules, and in particular a plant for aircraft making, aircraft construction. You don't change the rules on how you build an aircraft. We all know this now. And what is interesting is that yet the workers there are blue collars and they are asked to be innovative while keeping the rules, not making stupid things, but being innovative, preserving the rules. And they did it, and they managed fantastic evolutions in manufacturing plants of Airbus. Another example, this is in startup. In deep tech, you have the first product. It is here on stage. You see it. What is in this product the creative legacy? What is the things you want to keep as a category? What is the topology of this thing? What is the creative power in this? And what are the variables that are just contingent and have no interest? When you are scaling a deep tech startup, you are actually building the creative heritage of your company. And this is a very, very, very difficult step in the growth of the firm, how to identify the creative heritage of a company. Well, maybe it's interesting to use those kind of approaches. Some implication in industry. Interestingly, because we are here also to speak of bio, we discovered, again, thanks to Dassault Systèmes, we were put in touch with our friends at ENS Ulm on the theory of biology, and we worked on this, and we discussed about the logic, the new theories that could be interesting to account for evolution today. We discussed that a lot, and discussing this, two things appear. Strangely enough, just a very simple shiftification. This is a shiftification of ordinal 2 made by a fantastic professor called Alain Proutet. And what you see here finally represent relatively well the logic of symbiosis. So a shiftification of a very simple category finally gives you an interesting model of symbiosis. And the second point, and this is maybe the last link to the previous presentation, the second point is that if you understand that evolution could be seen as a form of creative preservation, you understand that the main steps in the evolution have to be recognized at the moment where nature invents preservation logics. DNA is a preservation technique. Cell membrane is a preservation technique. Kernel of the cell is a preservation technique. And you see that if you follow not the mutations, but the preservations, then you might have an interesting way of understanding contemporary evolutions. Contemporary understanding of evolution, sorry. Okay, this, you understand there is a research program for us with, we hope, some kind of implications. We have now a new institute working on this at Ecole. This is called Bauhaus of Transitions. This is supported by Dassault Systèmes, and again, we thank you for this. And this is supported by many other partners with whom we have a lot of common collaborative research. And what we hope to do with this is precisely to extend an understanding of what is creative preservation, but also extend the way of managing these processes, and hopefully make that the managers of today are more aware that managing in the unknown might be managing creative preservation. With that, I stop here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pascal. Now I understand we have hidden variables. Now we have new variables for creativity and preservation. We have time for only one question. Let's expand a little bit on the relationship between what you've shown, creativity, preservation, and biology. Beyond the DNA example, do you think there is a process for preservation on the discussion you've had with École Normale for preservation? It's a tricky one, huh?
Yeah, I wouldn't dare to answer this because I'm really not a biologist. It was more a kind of theoretical discussion with Maël and others. Say, yeah, certainly we should focus much more on the preservation processes, because here there is a key that was not always completely put in the models. So this is just that. Now, if we use a theory to think about the processes,
yes,
then here we should understand how to model the category before the preservation logic
of the processes.
Yeah, and then understand how on this category you could have something that looks like a shiftification. That's
maybe there's a
the mystery
shiftification in
here.
historicity.
Yep.
Okay.